Hello and welcome to the Honey Badger Hangout. My name is Allison Tiemann, otherwise known as Typhon Blue, and with me today is Karen Strawn, otherwise known as Girl Writes What, and Hannah Wallen. Before we get started, I'd like to offer a big thanks to our two newest recruits, Alyssa and Rachel. These two lovely ladies have stepped up to the plate and helped us out by writing today's news and show segments. Rachel has a Tumblr where she writes under the name Naughty Nerdess. To see more of her work, search for Naughty Nerdess on Tumblr. Alyssa is a YouTube blogger under the name Alyssa Majiri. Her channel can be found at www.youtube.com/users/Alyssa Majiri, link in the low bar. If you're listening and you want to volunteer to help us out, please drop us a line at honeybadgersradio@gmail.com. That is honeybadgers plural radio@gmail.com.
Hello.
Singer. It's happening again, Karen. Okay, thanks.
Oh God, my fault.
Yeah. We got it under control. If you're listening and you want to volunteer to help us out, please drop us a line at honeybadgerradios.com. Okay, Karen.
Okay.
Just get the
I think
you got it. All right.
I think so.
I can still hear it though.
I pulled another Dinesme.
Yeah. It's just a. Actually, hit your mic icon in the Google Hangout for now, and then close it off.
Okay.
All right. You got it. All right. Maybe it's me. Okay, Karen. No, it's not me. All right. Okay, no, there it goes. All right. Let's get this back on track. Singer, writer, or artist, if you have a talent, we can put it to use. If you don't have a talent, we could use someone to help us out with transcribing video and audio to text. Thanks to everyone who has volunteered so far to help us so far. And again, if you want to volunteer, that email address is honeybadgersplural@gmail.com. Thanks. And if you don't have time to volunteer, consider donating to the Honey Badger cause and help us spread our vile message of true equality further. To donate, go to the Honey Badger Brigade webpage and click not on the PayPal button, but on the little card icons under the PayPal button. It's a bit tricky, but we only have smart people donating to us anyway, so you should be able to figure it out. Our website is www.honeybadgerbrigade.com. Now I'd like to do a shout out to some great comments we've received on our previous Hangouts. From Betty Swallick, 2. Here you go, girls. I thought this poem might amuse you. 50 Shades of Grey by Pam Aries. The missus brought back a paperback. Down Shepton Mallet Way. I had a look inside her bag. 'Twas 50 Shades of Grey. Well, I just left her to it, and at 10 I went to bed. An hour later she appeared. The sight filled me with dread. In her left hand she held a rope, and in her right a whip. She threw them down upon the floor, and then began to strip. Well, 50 years ago I might have had a peek, but Mabel hasn't weathered well. She's 84 next week. Watching Mabel bump and grind could not have been much grimmer, and then things went from bad to worse. She toppled off her Zimmer. As she struggled upon her feet, a couple minutes later, she put her teeth back in and said, I'm a dominator. Now if you knew our Mabel, you'd see just why I sputtered. I'd spent 2 months in traction from the last complaint I'd uttered. She stood there nude and naked, bent forward just a bit. I went to hold her sensual-like and stood on her left tit. Mabel screamed, her teeth shot out. My God, what had I done? She moaned and groaned and then shouted out, Step on the other one! Well, readers, I can tell no more of what occurred that day. Suffice to say, my jet-black hair turned 50 shades of gray. Thank you, Betty Swallick. That's a great poem. And on Honey Badger Hangout debut, Dr. Random Cam had this to say. That was epic, even the intro, especially the intro. Blog Talk has got you so efficient at dealing with fuck-ups that Allison just plows through it on one side while Karen has a comedy of errors on the other side for just the right amount of time. It's like an early System of a Down live show when Darren fucks his guitar up one way or another, screams, drops his pants, and crowd surfs for a while as Serge tries to chant the crowd through it to keep the show going somehow, and Shabo is waiting for his cue. You guys rock. Not since System of a Down has there been such an awesome Jesus, Satan, and Friends show. Except it's not just metal, it's brain food. You like Charlie's Angels, but the opposite. You're Mary Jane's Demons. If you were men, you would be my biggest man crushes. Deal with whatever that means. Thank you for those wonderful words of encouragement, Dr. Randomer Cam. Especially since, we definitely do fuck up quite a bit. All right, and now I'm going to go to the shout-outs. Shout-outs are opportunities for you, the audience, to get involved in men's rights activism. Permutation of Ninjas, the Permutation of Ninjas Tumblr, is asking us all to email RAINN on March 15th to change their definition of rape to include the majority of male victims. RAINN currently uses a definition of rape that excludes most male rape victims, in particular male victims of female rapists. RAINN then promotes statistics based on this definition, minimizing the extent and scope of sexual victimization of men and boys. The Permutations of Ninjas Tumblr is asking us all to email RAINN to change their definition to include the majority of male victims of rape. For more information, see the link to Permutation of Ninjas Tumblr in the show notes. You can find the show notes by going to our website at honeybadgerbrigade.com and clicking on the blog link. Now on to Hannah with the news. Hannah, you're going to have to unmute your mic. Hannah. Okay. Anyway, so Permutation of Ninjas is a Tumblr. You can find it by searching Permutation of Ninjas on Tumblr. Okay, there we go. Hannah's ready. Hannah, Hannah, you got the news. Go for it. Are we still having...
I'm still hearing an echo. Is nobody else hearing the echo?
I am still hearing an echo, too. Must be me.
Okay.
Anyway, so Permutation of Ninjas. This is just go ahead with the news.
I was going to say, I don't want to talk over that because I couldn't understand any of it.
Oh, so you can understand anything of that I was saying?
No. And I'm still getting an echo.
Okay. The echo seems to have gone from me.
I'm still hearing an echo. Is nobody else hearing the echo?
I am still hearing an echo.
That was the previous time that I said I was hearing an echo.
The issue is that somebody has on a tab on their browser, they have it open, the actual tab for the Hangout, and it's playing with a delay because that's what it does when it's playing live. It plays with a delay.
Is it playing through the Hangout?
Yeah, the thing is that...
I mean, you have a YouTube window open that is on the Hangout page, and it's playing.
Okay, I think we got it. I'm supposed to have my sound going through my actual headphones, but I did have a tab open. It might have been me this time. I actually had the tab open with the sound off, but apparently YouTube may be playing despite the fact that you've turned the sound off the video. So, looks like the echo is resolved.
I have like 50 tabs open, but I'm not hearing it now.
Okay, was it echoing while I was talking?
Yes.
All right. You know what? Let's just go to the news. Let's just go to the news. It's over now. Let's go to the news.
All right. And the news, which will not open. There we go. In an interesting twist, RAINN has called the White House task force charged with creating a plan to reduce rape on college campuses to task. Quote, RAINN has urged the task force to remain focused on the true cause of the problem. In the last few years, there has been an unfortunate trend toward blaming rape culture for the extensive problem of sexual violence on campuses. While it is helpful to point out the systemic barriers to addressing the problem, it is important to not lose sight of a simple fact. Rape is caused not by cultural factors, but by the conscious decisions of a small percentage of the community to commit violent crime, said the letter to the task force from RAIN's president, Scott Berkowitz, and vice president for public policy, Rebecca O'Connor. End quote. RAIN also gives a shout out to common sense and at least acknowledges male victims exist. Quote, RAIN's recommendations pointed to research that suggests that more than 90% of college rapes are committed by about 3% of college men. Reliable research about female perpetrators is harder to come by. End quote. The group's Shared Parenting Consortium struck a blow against UK fathers this February with their successful lobby effort to change Clause 11 of the government's Children and Families Bill. The original Clause 11 stated, "A court is as respects each parent, unless the contrary is shown, that involvement of that parent in the life of the child concerned will further the child's welfare." The original promoted parents being in the life of their children unless evidence proves otherwise. The consortium argued that the wording did not explain clearly that the child's welfare is paramount. Their lobbying led to the amendment of Clause 11 to reflect that the involvement of fathers might be no more than indirect contact. This conveys to judges that they are obligated to order contact, but not very much. Stay strong, UK fathers. Our hearts go out to you. In more recent news, a new men's rights group started in Halifax, Nova Scotia on March 1st with the debut of their website, mensrightshalifax.com. The site for Men's Rights Halifax is full of good information from articles to videos discussing the news. Sandwich Heist, when asked why he started Men's Rights Halifax, said the following, quote, "Lack of services for men and the inequalities taking place with domestic violence were part of the reason. Men's Rights Halifax is going to address issues like lack of support for male victims of domestic violence, male genital mutilation, false allegations, reproductive rights, paternity fraud, discrimination in child custody cases, and suicide rates." End quote. If anyone lives in Halifax or on the Canadian East Coast, Men's Rights Halifax needs you to send in tips, articles, photos, postering anything that exposes misandry and gets the word out. Elsewhere, Men's Human Rights Ireland is headed towards the spotlight. The movement is planning on going live with their site, menshumanrightsIreland.org, by the end of March. Their goals range from drawing attention to unfair family courts to highlighting the way issues like domestic violence are viewed in Irish society. Jim Bissett, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, the MHRI organizer, stated in an interview with Honey Badger Radio, quote, "There are a number of advocacy groups and campaigns operating in Ireland that don't seem very interested in showing the whole picture, which in turn leads to the perception that issues like domestic violence are gendered problems." End quote. Men's Human Rights Ireland is adamant about making a change for the better in Ireland. They have a strong team prepared to take on the challenges facing Irish men. Good work, gents. With the start of these new organizations and the growth of the men's human rights movement, we've made one more step toward true equality. These groups need all the help and support they can get to ensure justice is served for all. Please go check out their sites and make your voice heard as well. Back to you, Allison.
Thanks, Anna. We're going to move now to our discussion segment. The format for this is changing a little bit. We are going to do a summary of a discussion item and then discuss the item, and then move on to another discussion item and then discuss that item. Pretty simple. But now let's go to Victor. Victor, unmute yourself and come forward and read Ban Bossy.
Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, let me know if you have an echo. Okay, so Ban Bossy. The hashtag #BanBossy Twitter trend is a campaign by feminists to create social pressure to eliminate the use of the word bossy as a description for girls when they act bossy. It's a bossy effort in its own right, as it's basically an effort to get boys and girls alike accustomed to bossiness and females who cannot engage in a cooperative effort with other people without acting bossy. The effort uses the false pretense that using the word bossy is bullying to disguise the way feminists are trying to boss people into tolerating bossy women. Guys get called patriarchal, oppressive, domineering, overbearing, authoritarian, dictatorial, cocky, demanding, draconian, brutal, and conceited, stuffed shirts, hard-assed, iron-fisted, heavy-handed, but that's okay, right? Just as long as when girls act the same way, that gets guys so labeled, they don't get called bossy. Because, as we have learned, to feminists, things that happen to both sexes only matter when they happen to women and girls. Then they're an excuse to dictate everyone else's rights. That's not bossy, is it?
No, not in the slightest. Yeah, it's typical hypocrisy. And the other thing that boys get called is a bully, which is more stigmatizing and harder to defend than bossy. When girls act that way, we use the term bossy, and bossy can be, sort of cute, sort of, silly and childish. But when you are labeled a bully, that's something that, the authorities need to get involved in, need to step on really hard. And go ahead, take it away, Karen.
Well, I thought it was really hilarious how when Hannah Rosen, there was a YouTube video of her having a sort of an informal debate, her and her daughter against her husband and her son, on who is better, girls or boys, women or men. And her son gave his opening statement in the men are better category, and Hannah Rosen immediately jumped on her husband, thank God not her son, but her husband, as being a bully. The very fact that her son had given a very, very effective opening statement that was probably coached in part by his father, that he had actually done that. That was labeled as, this is just like you, she said. This is exactly like you. You always do this. You just bully your way through everything, right? So we're setting up a debate, right, where there's one side pro, one side con, and the moment the other side states its case and does it in an effective manner, Hannah Rosen is calling them a bully, right? It was this. This is really what it is. Yeah, men aren't called necessarily bossy, but the idea that boys or men are rewarded for being dictatorial or being tyrannical is ridiculous. Boys and men are occasionally rewarded for displaying leadership, but leadership has nothing to do with being bossy. Boys who assert themselves in school, they're punished for that. I even know a young boy. He's 6 now. He's had trouble since he went into kindergarten, and he gets sent home from school early because he was defending a girl on the playground. She was being bullied, and he pushed the bullies, right? And said, you don't treat her like that, and he gets sent home from school, right? Like boys who assert themselves. Are you kidding me? They get rewarded. Boys being assertive getting rewarded? Not now. Maybe in the 50s, but not now. Like, I don't even know what planet these women are living on.
They're living on a planet where they never really compare reality for women, what happens to girls, to the reality for boys. They just compare it to what their ideology says happens for boys, which is that boys have no problems, and they're always treated with respect. And anyway, go ahead, Hannah.
I just wanted to, the one thing I wanted to say to this, besides what's already been said, is that this is a problem that's been around for a long time. people not recognizing the difference between bullying and leadership in girls, and particularly feminists not recognizing it. And it reminds me of a meme that I've seen around the internet, and my attention was drawn to it because I had a bad female boss. I mean, she was really bad. I've discussed her on Reddit. She discriminated against me because of my involvement in a domestic violence case. But the meme compares a boss to a leader, and it's pretty simple. The differences, they're very subtle. And it says a boss drives employees, a leader coaches employees. A boss depends on authority, a leader depends on goodwill. A boss inspires fear, a leader generates enthusiasm. A boss says I, a leader says we. And it continues on like that. You can probably find it just by searching the difference between a boss and a leader. And what it basically boils down to is that it gives the leader credit for remembering that he or she is part of a team, and for remembering the humanity of the people that he or she is working with and guiding. Whereas a boss is more, a bossy person is more pushy, more dictatorial, refuses to recognize that the people that he or she is dealing with are going to have an experience related to the instruction, related to trying to get things done and everything. And it's basically the use of the meme. And it just really reminded me of this discussion, because what it looks to me like feminists are trying to do is bully people into treating bossy girls like leaders when they're not.
Another thing I would like to add to this is that oftentimes I've noticed that in the culture that we're in, whenever a woman were to act bossy or in any way a feigned or forced confidence, the cultural reaction is that this is a woman that is speaking out against the powers that be, and pretty much anything that she says goes. It's basically any woman that speaks out is automatically Rosa Parks, no matter what. And it's creating a kind of vibe where I think a lot of people could be intimidated by the kind of atmosphere that's created when a woman speaks out in anger and acts bossy. But being denied the capacity to even point out this vibe, to even be able to point out these circumstances, is nothing more than just telling people that they are not allowed to even think for themselves or even to acknowledge the reality that is. And I think that there's really nothing I can say to this except this really sucks, and it's just not something that I think I can only just express my frustration for that, and pretty much fuck anybody who would say that it's not okay to point out what is in reality in and of itself. But that's all I have to say about that.
Well, I mean, for me, the favorite boss, the absolute favorite boss that I have ever had, and here's the thing: we called her Shirley the Nazi. Shirley the Nazi. And it was because she was absolutely, she was the toughest broad you could ever meet. She had a button that she wore on her lapel of her jacket that had Pope Ratzinger with his little opera glasses scowling, right? And it said, "I can see you masturbating." And and I was just like, "Shirley, don't you know every time you masturbate, a baby bird dies?" And she says, "There's a whole lot of dead baby birds out there on account of me." But she was absolutely fair. She was absolutely 100%. Her list of priorities were, she was completely principled, right? And she never went outside of her principles. And she was absent. She led in the front of the charge, right? And every single boss I've ever had that I have really respected has led in the front of the charge. They have been willing to get down there, get in the dirt, get in the gutter, get in the trenches, do what it had, fill in what needs to be done, right? If there's nobody to do what needs to be done, they're in there doing it, right? That is That is leadership,
Yeah.
right? Even if you're getting your hands dirty and getting your clothes dirty, that's leadership, right? But the swinging your keys and making demands and being wrapped in furs in some tent at the very rear of the formation, that's not leadership, right? That's dictating. That's just dictatorial. That's tyranny, right? So
It's sort of like
that's the way.
It's sort of like expecting special treatment because you're a woman.
Special treatment because you're in charge.
Yeah, well, but expecting that nobody can criticize you because you're a woman, and you get to behave in whatever manner you want, and you don't get criticized. That's the recipe for a horrible, horrible person to have to work under. And with that, let's move on to our next discussion item. Hannah, take it away.
All right, now I'm probably going to butcher this name too, and I apologize for that. Ariel Shochet, and this is pronounced Schochet. So if somebody else knows how to pronounce this, go ahead and let me know. A wrongfully incarcerated father who was released in October 2013 has initiated a class action lawsuit against the County of Bergen, New Jersey, on behalf of inmates in the county's work release program. The lawsuit addresses the program's practice of imposing fees for room, board, and lease of tracking equipment, which create self-perpetuating actionable debt to the county. The inmates cannot be released unless they pay their fees, but while in custody, the fees and support debt continues to accumulate. He was released following a hearing in which the state's Supreme Court determined that the county violated his due process rights by incarcerating him for failure to pay an ordered amount of child support without a hearing. According to the Bergen Dispatch, the Bergen County Superior Court has been routinely incarcerating non-custodial individuals, parents who fall behind on child support or alimony payments without allowing them the ability to pay hearing to which they are legally entitled. The county has been enrolling, quote, deadbeat, unquote, parents in its work release program and heaping additional debt upon them, mostly men. The class action lawsuit seeks to force the county to follow laws related to the civil rights of individuals accused of willfully failing to meet support obligations. Just for clarity, what's basically going on with this is that they are taking fathers who are ordered to pay child support, who have fallen on hard times or for whatever other reason are unable to pay the child support order, refusing them the hearing that the state of New Jersey says that they're entitled to find out if they are actually able to pay the order, and then putting them in this program. They're incarcerating them and putting them in this work release program that lets them have a job and go to work, but then they're basically keeping them in debt to the company store for the rest of their life, and there's pretty much no way for them to get out except this type of legal action.
Yeah, this is unconscionable. When I saw this on Tuesday, I talked to people about it as well, and I would suspect we're going to see a lot more of this as time goes on, primarily because a lot of the cities and counties who are falling into debt need some type of income. So what they're going to end up doing is they're going to end up taking these fathers in, setting them on a work release program. Now these guys are paying their own way to work. It's they'll drop them off at a bus stop or something like that. They'll put a tracking bracelet on them. Yeah, I know in Bergen County they were required to pay for room and board to stay in jail. And then on top of that, if they had a tracking bracelet attached to them, that was an extra $70 a week. That's a lot of money.
another thing that I can actually contribute a story from my own family here, considering it relates to child support and the way that the child support agencies can try to collect and try to essentially put a gun to fathers' heads. The thing to mention here is, of course, there's the Andrew Jacksonian quote, debt to slavery, and that's entirely relevant. But one thing about my father, when he lost custody of me and he ended up paying child support to my mother, even after my mother gave up custody of me for me to live with my father. Once I was living for my father for a while, the child support agency would still pursue my father for child support payments, even though my mother had no child to support on her own. So even though the child support agency had been essentially called off by my mother, but they still pursued. And what they ended up doing was, without any announcement, suspending his driver's license without notification to any party. So in essence, if my father was pulled over, he could be nailed for having a suspended license, and he could face additional disciplinary action. And thank God he was not. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because I'm concerned about not only the circumstances for these work programs where men are essentially stuck in a loop or that they cannot get out of, but I'm also worried about child support agencies using sneaky tactics in order to start these programs for men that had done nothing wrong to begin with. And basically, these child support agencies can, from my experience, can operate in such a way where they are not held accountable for these underhanded, possibly unconstitutional tactics. And I am very concerned that it's not just that cycle to worry about, but it's also a program institutionalized such that men can be caught in a net that no one knows about, and that is completely installed under the radar, that are used to rope men into that loop. And I'm not going to lie, it's a super villain way of essentially installing free labor and getting a permanent revenue stream, but to call this by any stretch of anything positive would just be far beyond my own principles.
You're absolutely right. And this is something that some of this has been going on for a very long time. This is some of the things within the child support enforcement system in the United States, and every state has a little bit different system from every other state, but it's all the same overall federal agency. One of the things is that there's really not a lot of recourse for a man who is told he has to pay more than he's earning. And there's supposed to be. I mean, you're supposed to be able to go to court and everything, but of course you have to have a lawyer to go to court. And in the last 20 years or so, I think almost every state has set it up so that when you owe child support, the state takes that directly out of any paycheck that you earn. So if the state's taking your money already, you can't pay a lawyer to go fight the state for wrongfully taking more money than they should. And a good example of this is in Ohio. Ohio has it set up so that they're legally not allowed to take more than 60% of your check. They're not allowed to take more than just your first paycheck. But they can assess you for child support well beyond what they're legally allowed to take. Then they can turn around and call you delinquent. And once they call you delinquent, all that stuff that the Republicans put into the welfare reform bill comes into play, and they start suspending your license. They can incarcerate you. They can add fines because, you know, if you don't have enough money to pay the debts you already owe, the most rational thing to do is add to it. And they can go after, if you have a second wife, they can go after your second wife's income in sneaky ways. For instance, in my family, what was done was I was sent a letter by the Child Support Enforcement Agency stating that they were going to take every year my part of our combined tax refund to make up for the amount that my husband was considered delinquent because they based his child support obligation on more money than he was actually making and then refused to reduce it to what he was making. I got that letter, and I got the letter that said I had to sign a paper saying I wasn't coerced into signing the other paper, which said if I didn't sign that paper, they were going to put my husband in jail. But that's not coercion, is it? And this is exactly the type of thing that they're doing to men all over the United States. And they'll take these guys and they'll take 60% of their income. And then on top of that, of course, taxes are taking another, 15 to 25% of their income. And they end up trying to live on maybe 10 or 15% of their income. And if their income's not very high to begin with, then they end up homeless. They end up in debt. They end up couch surfing. And if you end up in those situations, you end up in other trouble as well. Homeless men, at least in Ohio, homeless men get hassled everywhere they go. Even if they're licensed to panhandle, as soon as they start approaching people, it's harassment. So this is a situation where they've pretty much turned fathers into perpetual criminals. And I can see where this New Jersey thing, in addition to essentially being legalized slavery, is really just the next step in completely breaking down fathers into being officially treated as a subhuman group.
Yeah, when I read that they're making them lease their own bracelets that they have to wear to track them to find out if they're actually looking for jobs, I was just like, wow, that's really frickin' dehumanizing. Yeah, welcome back to debtors' prisons, right? Anyway, let's move on to the next discussion item. Anita's new shenanigans. The feminist media critic, Anita Sarkeesian, has been a controversial figure since the moment she stepped into the scene. Popular media paints her as a victim, a strong woman in the face of rampant misogyny, a daring lady with the nerve to stand up to internet bullying. Her actions, however, tell a different story. When she used game footage that was not her own, people began to question her status as a gamer. There were whispers, but in time, her hardcore fans made peace with it. When a video was released of her openly stating that she was in fact not a gamer at all, the fans remained undeterred. They convinced themselves that the footage had been taken out of context. In time, that too was forgotten. Many were convinced that this was just another slanderous attempt to discredit her. Those that saw her for what she really was fell into despair. They'd hit a wall. Not one of them imagined that the undeniable truth would come in the form of a professional artist. Tamara Gray had never heard of Anita Sarkeesian. Her recent appearance in the media brought the unthinkable to Tammy's attention. Someone had stolen her work. It had been taken by the team of Ms. Sarkeesian and used to promote an agenda she had wanted nothing to do with. So what she did what anyone would do. She confronted the thief and asked that Anita cease all use of her work. Both Anita and Jonathan McIntosh calmly told her that they were a non-profit and that the law was on their side. This time, their fans were not as forgiving. The backlash was immense, and many that defended her in the past couldn't do it any longer. Anita has backed into a corner, and no one is coming to her aid. Now that piece was by Rachel Edwards, our newest recruit. And Rachel has told us that she's done research into whether or not Anita Sarkeesian and her husband actually are a nonprofit, and she has found out that they aren't. So they can't use that as a defense. But of course, I think what their attempt is to throw up as much smoke as possible and then disappear. But here are some quotes from feminists who are defending Anita. From Isle Sanctuary Creative Artists, saying thievery is a microaggression. Sorry that you feel that way, but that doesn't negate the fact that even if your art is non-commercial from another intellectual property, no apology is owed due to free speech, and freedom of expression. You can't demand them to show their fair use proof. You have to educate yourself very fast on this information. Sorry this happened to you. No one thinks about asking or cares until they are called on it. Our organization recommends watermarking all artwork to protect yourselves rather than blithely assuming people will do the right thing. The error was in the original text. They do this in other fields and no credits are given, like scientific research. The public is too lazy to try and step up on requests with it being so easy to use search engines. Okay, this is gibberish. So on the one hand, they're saying that this woman can't demand an apology for Anita using her artwork without permission, but on the other hand, they're saying that yes, actually Anita did steal it, and this is victim blaming. They're saying that she should have taken proactive steps to prevent Anita from stealing her artwork. Why? Anyway, here's another artist who's defending Anita's actions. I Am Your Hera says, I love that Cow Kitty is pleading for this to be handled calmly and professionally. After signally blasting a crude accusation across social media where it would obviously get picked up and distributed. This is disingenuous at best. She lit a match and is now trying to backtrack, which is really unfair. So the person, Tamara, whose artwork is stolen, is in the wrong for pointing out that Anita stole her artwork. Okay, Karen, go ahead. Go right ahead. Ugh, you have to unmute yourself first, though. You have to unmute yourself first.
Okay. Sorry, I had a kid who was just like coming up and distracting me. But like this really, really, really troubles me as somebody who owns copyright to intellectual property. Like, frankly, anybody who wants to is free to use anything that I have on my YouTube channel, as long as they credit me for it, right? But I do have books that are under license with a publisher, and I take copyright very, very seriously. And like the entire idea that not preventing. Oh, so the mere sharing, the mere displaying of your artwork. Because all it takes for somebody to capture that image on the part of Tammy, right, is to save as JPEG, right? Save as JPEG and use it. All they have to do with my books is buy an ebook copy of it and save it and strip the DRM if it exists, depending on where they bought it, and they can upload it to 4,000 of their closest friends. They can do whatever they want with it. They can, and I don't see a single dollar, right? And Tammy doesn't see a single dollar, and her work is getting used by somebody that she absolutely 100% disagrees with. Like this just it drives me freaking insane. The idea that by putting your artwork out there, you're inviting people to steal it. That's really what it is. You're inviting by showing your artwork, you're inviting people to steal it. Like that is the essence of victim blaming. And the fact that anybody could defend Anita, even if she was a nonprofit, she still has no fair use grounds. Even if she was a nonprofit.
It wouldn't make a difference if she was a nonprofit. It wouldn't make it fair use. This is something that I butted up against as a professor, adjunct professor, when I was teaching photography. Even in the classroom, fair use has limitations when it is somebody's paid work. Now, Tamara's work it's not copyrighted, and it's not legally. It's well, I mean, no, it's not copyrighted, but because it's fan art. But the character that Anita displayed in this is abysmal. All she had to do, all Tamara asked for was acknowledgement and an apology. She didn't come along and say, pay me for this. She didn't come along and say, take it off your site. She didn't come along and do anything draconian. She just said, acknowledge that this is mine, that I did this, and that it's my fan art, and apologize for taking it from me because you swiped it without permission.
Well,
and Anita couldn't even do that. That's
no,
sad.
But the thing is, Tamara did own copyright to that. I mean, it was her original image, even if it was in the style.
Yeah, she owns an ethical copyright, but it's on
right.
Well, the site that it was on, shoot, I can't think of the name of it now. Shoot, what is it? It's an art sharing site. I looked into that site and I didn't put my work on that site because it specifically says they have the right to reproduce your work and sell T-shirts of it and stuff like that. Or at least it did when I looked at it originally.
The website does.
Yeah, they do. And, but
like
it's not. It doesn't give everybody. It's not a Creative Commons license. It is a simple. It's a display, and saying that having your work out there gives someone else the right to take it and use it is the same as saying that showing your cleavage gives someone the right to take your tits out and play with them. I know that is ridiculous.
No, it's the moment you create a work, right? Your copyright is on it. You don't have to register it. It doesn't have to be published under any. It doesn't have to. You don't have to have the little symbol. You don't have to have any of that. You just have to have it as your work. The moment it comes out of your pen, it's yours.
Quick note, and then Sage, I will stop and you can talk. The one thing I got to point out here is we're looking at a difference between copyright law and. Stop doing that. Oh God, if you guys could see my face right now. No, the difference between copyright law in the United States and and copyright law in Canada, I think, because in the United States, if you don't buy your copyright from the government, you don't have it, and if you take somebody to court in the United States for violating a copyright you haven't paid the government to protect, they can file a frivolous suit against you. And I know this because it happened to my family over photographs a newspaper stole from my father. And it cost us $500 to not get sued by the newspaper for trying to enforce my father's copyright on his original work.
That doesn't mean that he didn't have copyright on it. That just meant he couldn't prove it.
Yeah, pretty much. Effectively, it does.
Yeah, but he doesn't have to. Legally, he doesn't have to register copyright. He doesn't have to pay the government.
All right, good. Sage explodes.
Hey!
Sage, come on.
I want in.
No, but Anita's still an asshole.
Yeah, she is an asshole, I agree. Okay, yeah, I was really wanting to weigh in on this because, I work in software, so copyright's a huge deal for us as well. We have our own controversies in software patents and all that. But, no, there's definitely a lot of truth to what both you guys are saying, and no matter what the interpretation, Anita sucks. But when it comes to copyright, and I'm assuming that this artist in the image in question, it was created in the jurisdiction of the United States, correct? Yes, or need verification?
That I don't
believe
know.
so.
Sure.
What's that?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, in the United States, one thing that Karen is right about is that when you're creating a copyright, it is true from the I forget the name of the convention off the top of my head, that you do have a copyright, but if it's not registered, the government didn't bear witness to that copyright. That's the purpose of registering it. When the government bears witness to the registered copyright, it gets a lot of weight in court, which makes the lawsuits easier. But if you do not register the copyright, even though you still have it, you don't carry nearly as much weight in court, and yes, somebody could encroach on your rights. So there's definitely a lot of truth to what both you guys are saying. But the thing that I really wanted to I guess contribute to all this is when it comes to Anita's use of this work, I think that there's a positive note here, and that is in the internet makes a lot of copyright infringement very transparent and gives kind of a limited time to how long somebody could try to infringe on copyright before somebody notices. And there's a cartoonist, a really awesome cartoonist named Nina Paley, who had her own dramas with this. And she has noted over and over and over again that if somebody has an original copyright, even if it isn't registered, the fact of the matter is that oftentimes when they share that work, it's pretty easy to trace it back to the source based on the way that the audience is exposed to the information. So I'm thinking that the fact that Anita had her game footage or rather, I say her game footage loosely, of course, but the game footage was found to not be hers. The use of the artwork was found to not be hers. And I think that this alone is creating a environment where, frankly, she just doesn't have a long wait. It just isn't going to take much longer for her credibility to be so totally shot that there's just no future for her work. And I think that this is, frankly, good news. And but yeah, when it comes to the copyright stuff, I think that when it comes to this copyright stuff, it's just really important to note that regardless of how well it holds up in court, I think that's for the lawyers to figure out. But at the end of the day, transparency showed that this artist obviously is the originator of this information, and that Anita showed her tremendous disrespect, regardless of how exactly the work was used or in what context. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, well, go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah, I got to point out one more thing, because this is something that really Anita should have known, since she claims to be such a geek and everything. And that is the relationship between fan art and original art. And fan artists, fan fiction writers, anybody who generates fan work based on an original concept makes a major point to credit the original artist with the creation of the characters, with the creation of the original art. This is an important thing. They do not try to pretend that they came up with something on their own and just put it out there. And part of it is because they're immersed in the culture of what they're working with and everything, and they are fans. But part of it is that they're artists, and they know that it sucks to have somebody steal your stuff. And they do not want to disrespect the individual of whom they are fans. Where with Anita's situation, she basically just ripped off somebody's work. And if she were immersed in gaming culture, and particularly the video gaming culture she claims to be immersed in, she would have known exactly how rude and how shitty that was for her to do that. And either she would not have done it, or she would have bent over backwards to give credit where credit was due, and not create this situation to begin with. And once she realized she had created this situation, she would have been apologetic, she would have been embarrassed, she would have owned up to it. Well, if she had any character, she would have owned up to it, and she would have tried to fix it. It wouldn't have been a situation of claiming, well, I did this, this is mine, and or this was made for me, and I have a right to it, and every other excuse in the book for why she should have been able to just rip off somebody else's work and use it like that. The other thing is, there is sort of a fine line of tolerance a lot of times between fan art and original artists. There's a lot of fan art that gets taken down for copyright infringement because it's using a character created by one of the bigger, the networks or the bigger game companies and stuff like that. And so if you take somebody's work like that and you put it out there all over the place like that, you can actually get the person into huge trouble for creating the work in the first place and putting it on the internet. And so she really put Tamara at risk when she did that. And that's something that probably hasn't been considered in this at all. So the rudeness of what she did wasn't just a matter of theft, but she also made another artist, another person vulnerable to getting into trouble for doing something that really was done out of being a fan.
Considering the number of people that she's now taken various pieces from, I wonder if a class action lawsuit is possible.
I don't know if there is such a thing for a copyright. There should be.
Well, I think she's stolen so much material, right? She's stolen artwork, she's stolen Let's Play footage, she's stolen all kinds of stuff. And, like she's basically taken so many people's work, and it's not even that she's taken it even without permission, but she's taken it without giving them credit, without even giving a ping back or a link to their channel. Nothing. There's nothing in return. And that's really, that, you know, like, I have no problem with people embedding my content in their blogs. Just link back to my channel, right? That's cool. It's all good, right? But you look at what she's done, and she's just stolen other people's content. She's stolen other people's work that a lot of them have monetized. A lot of them earn money on, and she's exploited it for her own benefit, and not even offered them a credit for it, not even mentioned their names, and that's just absolutely beyond the pale. It's you know, like, I'm perfectly fine. Fair use is fair use. If you want to, like, take a clip of a song and use it to prove a point, like Bane666 did in his recent series on Fist, which is a communist organization, using clips of songs, right? But he noted the songwriter, he noted the artist when he was using those songs, right? Like, you know, he didn't just steal the work and say, you know, oh, this is my own shit, or, you know, this is, you know, it's just, he actually directed people to whose work that was, that he was using. And that's really what I find atrocious in this whole thing with Anita, is that she's been using images and she's been using Let's Play footage from other people, and she hasn't even been mentioning who they are. And it's all traceable. It's all, like, provable. Even the Let's Play footage, you know, you just compare it against what's on YouTube. You compare, you know, the hit points and the life points and the freaking magic points and all of the points, and you know, against the scenes, and it's, you know, you can't fake that. It's matched up. It's their footage.
This leads me to one more question. Real simple, real quick. As much as she's stolen, as much as as she's, you know, taken from elsewhere to put into those videos, I honestly can't think of much content in her work that she produced, and certainly not much that would cost anything. What the hell did she do with that $150,000 that she got?
Gapped it.
That's all you can think of. I mean, she has to have kept it. She has to have spent it on other stuff. What exactly was funded by that? Besides those enormous '80s hoop earrings.
She has a for-profit corporation.
Yeah.
Well, it also funded all of the makeup and lip gloss and the nice earrings and the eyebrow pluck for all of her videos where she talks about the objectification of women.
Yeah, unless she has employees from Max Factor coming to her house and doing her face for her before her videos, makeup doesn't cost that much. In fact, you can get a tube of lipstick for $1. I know, I sell lipstick, so there's just no way she spent that much money putting all that together and doing all that work.
Well, you know what? We could talk about Anita's shenanigans for, let's just say, an excessive length of time. But let's move on to the next discussion item. This discussion item is titled, Calling Boys Rapists is Feminist. Last week, our good friends at the Good Man Project offered up more of their excellent parenting advice. Building on their previous works in which they recommended teaching boys that they are oppressors, they now are recommending teaching boys that they're future rapists. Let's have a look-see, shall we? Quote, "It would seem imperative that we as a nation of dads and moms and parties involved in the childhood business must also, in addition to strengthening the core of our young girls, make a more substantial attempt to soften our boys." Maybe soften isn't the proper word. Not exactly. Does there exist a catch-all word for "don't rape anyone, asshole"? Maybe not. End quote. Yes, Directing a don't rape anyone asshole attitude towards your son is the mark of excellent parenting. And for your daughter, let's empower her by talking at length with this obsessive glee about how fragile she is. Quote, raising strong girls is not enough because a strong girl, even the strongest of mind, body, will, and spirit, can too easily be fractured into 1,000 unrecognizable pieces. A glass bottle of glitter shattered on a Venetian tile floor by a physically stronger, drunker, misogynist boy. We can cobble together and restore some of the sparkle, but it's doomed to be mixed with crumbs, dust, and dirt, no matter how studious we are. A dulling of the shine, a repeal of the magic, end quote. Coincidentally, a heartfelt post on Reddit, Men's Rights Reddit, describes the end result of this kind of upbringing on the innocence of a young boy. Quote, anyone who would teach their children not to rape, and that they are potential rapists because of their gender, is a child abuser, unfit to be a parent, and that's all there is to it. Notice I didn't say teach them that rape is wrong. I said teach them not to rape. See the difference? Teaching a black child that stealing is wrong is different than teaching them not to steal. The latter examples of both of sexist and racist respectively, while the former are just moral lessons that we teach our children at appropriate times. When I was 8, I hadn't had sex ed yet, and I was being told that I was going to grow up to rape children unless I fixed myself. This is what people are proposing doing to their children, convincing them that they have the potential to be rapists if they don't stop themselves. How has that affected me? I used to be a cuddly little kid. After what my mom did to me, I developed a severe aversion to physical contact. She made it so that the main way that I bonded with people was tainted. I was not okay with touching other people or being touched. If anyone touched me, I'd tense up and try not to cry. I became quiet and isolated. I stopped making friends. I also became a bully, one of my deepest regrets. Additionally, it made me feel as if any sexual contact was inherently victimizing, end quote. That's the story of a young man talking about his boyhood after being told by his feminist mother that he was essentially a rapist in training, and she had to train that out of him. Feminists often claim we are living in a rape culture. They say that male sexuality is so toxic that it cannot be contained on its own, that each man is a ticking time bomb, ready to go off at any moment, waiting to rob young women of their innocence. It is with this in mind that some have suggested that we teach our young men not to rape. To feminists, men have no willpower, and any of them is a potential rapist. We know that despite this idea, only a small number of men do go on to rape. So what then is to become of these boys that are taught they are potential monsters? What happens to children that are raised to go through life with a constant fear that they will hurt someone they love? And by children, I mean boys. Is it worth it to rob boys of their childhood to provide a dubious benefit to girls? For feminists, it's definitely a sacrifice that they're willing to make. And I'll throw that out to the crowd. Sage, go ahead.
God damn it. I've said it before. I'm wondering what planet I'm on, and with all the hot gas, I'm guessing Venus. But the fact that this rape culture stuff is really starting to get on my last nerve. I mean, it's almost like, with the way that they talk about it, it's almost like rape culture is so condoned that, frankly, you could just wake up in the dumpster one night and you have a leg hanging out, and all of a sudden you're thinking, ah, shit, I got raped again. I got a colonoscopy tomorrow. I got a meeting to go to. But now it's getting, I can't stand the fact that they're now making it go down to kids, and they're actually going to be telling these boys that they're going to be defective at such a young age. That
Well, they're sexualizing them. They're sexualizing them, and not just sexualizing them, but they're demonizing their sexuality. I don't know what age the boy was the Good Man Project was referring to. You know, perhaps it was a 5-year-old, but this is not appropriate conversation for really young kids.
Not at all. You know what else? It's just that this is. I'm starting to really get this impression that misandry is pretty much one of the major forms of bigotry that is really passed down through oral tradition. It is something that has become a part of culture through this kind of how would I put this? through this avenue of thought. And children are, in essence, the commodity for ideologues. It's the impressionable minds is what the people who have ideological motivations really seek in order to perpetuate itself. So the fact that these children are not only going to be subject to these harmful messages, but they're also going to be more likely to believe in them when they get older. And not only is it abuse, it is abuse. It's just horrendous, but it's also just tremendously disrespectful to the human intellect. And I really don't think I can say much else without using a bunch of words I probably shouldn't be using. I'll let you guys go with this.
Well, here we go once again. We saw something not too dissimilar several years ago with the biting beaver incident. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but there was a feminist who was associated with some of the members of RadFem Hub by the name of Biting Beaver, and she caught her son masturbating to porn on more than one occasion. Wouldn't knock on his door or anything like that before walking into his room, would simply barge right in. And she was intent and encouraged to retroactively abort. And this is the type of attitude that we're going to start seeing spread about more and more. If you think he's a potential rapist, and that's exactly what this feminist considered him, was, oh my God, what did I do wrong? I didn't raise him right. He's masturbating now, and to porn no less. He's thinking of women when he masturbates. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean,
how old was he?
He was 17.
Oh, the horror.
At the time.
Christ.
17.
Jesus.
So 17 years old, and the idea that he might be masturbating and thinking of women makes him a rapist, or a potential rapist, or a rapist in waiting, or whatever.
At the point he was doing it, she was convinced she had ended up raising a rapist, and that the only solution, even though she loved her son, the only way to save him and to save any of the other women around was to kill him.
Jeez. That's and this really this most recent article is it's in the same mindset. It's the demonization of male sexuality, that it is automatically taking something from women if any male human has sexual experiences. But the other thing, this whole article is so covered in wrong sauce. There's just too many things to address here. And the first one, I think one of the most important ones, is that they're talking about telling young boys, demonizing young boys before they even have a chance to develop a sense of themselves, a full sense of themselves. Because your sense of self develops as you throughout your entire life. And it continues to change even in your adulthood, but in your childhood, you're still learning just the very basics of who you are. And to come along and enforce an adoption in the person of a demonization of his own sexuality is as much a sexual molestation of that person as if they were touching him or showing him nude images at that age. It is reprehensible. And it is disgusting. And I just cannot imagine doing that to a child. And it really is no different to me than and I'm so mad I can't think of the name of the book. The writer wrote about what it was like to grow up black in the South during the Jim Crow era, and he talked about I've actually cited this book or written reference to this book in my blog before, and he talked about getting a job as a child. He was going to work for this lady as a child, and she point blank looked at him and said, "Do you steal?" And he was shocked that he was asked that question and expected to give an honest answer, and momentarily laughed before he answered, and instantly was treated as if he was uppity. And this is the same kind of attitude that the sense of entitlement to treat someone as so subhuman and so unfeeling and so undeserving of human consideration, that you would impose on that person a sense of having a lack of morality or a lack of ability to control the self. And it's infuriating that people can articulate this and actually receive support for it and not get called out on it as the level of abuse that it is. And then the other end of it is the whole thing about shattering women, which I think I typed into chat, today I learned women are made of silly putty. And the idea that we're supposed to be so fragile and so helpless and so breakable that all it takes is one big bad thing happening to us and we'll never get back up again. And we'll never move on, and we'll never go forward, and we'll never recover, and we'll never live the rest of our lives out. Just being human is just as bad, just in a different way. You can't turn around and polarize people that way and expect the human race to function. You can't expect to have communities if you're telling one side, you guys are the devil, and you're telling the other side, well, you guys are going to get broken no matter what you do. You're going to get wrecked, so you might as well not even try to have any toughness or any strength or any self-reliance whatsoever. Just give up, quit trying to have a society, and just be done with it. It's probably one of the worst articles I've ever seen come out of that site. And that's saying something, because I really don't like the Good Men Project to begin with.
I think that the fact that they are looking at children as impressionable and malleable as they are, and presuming malice, and or boys in particular, presuming malice on boys, such that they're given a character and they're given an identity before it's even there. And by projecting this identity onto them, they are, in essence, defining that child's growth according to the framework set by this ideology. And what makes this so infuriating to me is it's one of those moments where you can't really do anything about it. You can't. I wish that I would be able to approach some of these kids and tell them, you're fine the way you are. You're okay. But the fact that these kids are just, in essence, just told that they are who this ideology, this dogma says they are, before they even, as it's been said before these children have a chance to even talk about themselves, to even learn about themselves, I really think this goes, again, beyond abuse. This is flat out programming, and it's also just denying these children the capacity to develop the self-esteem that they need to live healthy lives and become functioning adults. And I just don't think, I think it's terrifying that these people even have any clout whatsoever in their respective communities. Why do these people have power is just beyond my imagination at this point.
Let's call it for what it is. It is evil. It is evil. It's an evil act to perform on a child.
That's a nice way
and for those who are asking a little bit more about the whole biting beaver incident, eventually some screenshots were taken. Anonymous got involved, found out, tracked down where the son was at, and tried to get in contact with him. Nothing has been heard since. No reports were ever in the news concerning the kids. So look it up. It's out there. The kid's identity is out there. Whether or not anybody has ever actually told him what his mother was saying to all of her radical feminist friends, I don't know. But last I heard, kid's alive, and people were looking for him. That occurred, I want to say, back in 2008.
It's pretty unbelievable what is happening in the name of some sort of twisted morality. They think that they're benefiting something. Although at this point it seems like how can you justify doing this to a child? Stripping away their innocence and making them question themselves and making boys feel like they're potential monsters. That there's something monstrous inside them that could come out at any time. And I want to say to these feminists, if you want to prevent your son from raping, don't rape him. There you go. That'll prevent it. So I'm gonna throw it out. Does anybody else want to add something to this? Particular? It's pretty egregious. It's something that's hard to talk about. That this kind of mindset even exists. But if no, go ahead, Victor.
I think that we're at a point where really the just how nauseating this all is something that can only be experienced and not described.
Yeah, it's at a point where you like reach the singularity of what the fuck. What the fuck? How can you justify this? And I know that the people who are feminists who are probably watching this are able to justify this in their minds, teaching little boys that they're potential rapists. Not to respect people's boundaries, but there's something inside them that they have to control. That, you know, what was it the Good Men Project said? I just don't rape anyone, asshole. Having that kind of attitude towards your son is appropriate, and nobody calls him out on it. It's just mind-boggling. But since there's nobody else wants to say anything to this topic, I guess
have one thing to say. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
And we keep asking the same question: how can they justify this in their minds? How can they justify this in their minds? They're justifying it in their minds the same way that every hate movement that has ever existed has justified treating a segment of the population as less than human. They have enacted a dehumanization campaign against male humans. They've named them as a group. They have defamed them as a group by ascribing overall negative traits to males, including assigning to males traits that are not unique to males, that everybody does it. Males, females, adults, children have everybody has character flaws that we have to work with. But they'll name sets of character flaws as being masculine, and then they turn around and blame. They blame things on masculinity, they blame things on men as a group in society, as opposed to addressing the issues that have by their causes. And they'll turn around and shame, and this is the shaming. This is that treating of male sexuality as something evil. And now they're trying to use it to tame them. They're trying to use a sense of guilt, where they impose guilt for all rape on all men, as opposed, and all boys, as opposed to the perpetrators and the individual crimes. And the goal of doing something like that is to have control over a population. And that is exactly what's going on. That is what they're doing.
There's not much more to be said. I think everything has been said. So really, since everything has been said, the only thing left to say is that's the show, folks. Thank you to my co-hosts, and especially to Karen for giving us use of her channel, and to James and Sage and Hannah for bringing in their thoughts, and to the people you don't see, Alyssa and Rachel, for helping us out writing the copy. And don't forget to take a look at Alyssa's YouTube channel. The link is in the low bar, and Rachel's Tumblr. Well, again, the link is in the low bar. And thank you to everybody else who's even standing behind them. Phil for doing the animations, Europa for doing the artwork, and our newest artist, Yule, who's been working diligently behind the scenes. And finally, thank you to our donors and to the people who tune in every week to listen to us. It's been great, and you make the show, you make it possible. Because, well, I guess we could do it without any audience, but it would be really lonely. So thanks. Same Badger station, same Badger time.